Welcome to one of my favorite parks, Knoebel's Amusement Resort in Ellisburg, Pennsylvania. Ellisburg is about 50 miles northwest of Allentown, and right now we're on the scenic Skyway, overlooking most of the park. And as you can see, it's a pretty big park. It was a challenge for me to do this walkthrough because, unlike a normal amusement park, it doesn't have a formal midway. It's basically a huge picnic grove that just happens to have rides and coasters scattered around between the trees. So I had to be a little creative here, and bear with me because what we're going to do is start over at this parking lot, and I'm going to sort of zigzag throughout the park and point out certain landmarks so you know where you are approximately in the park. So here's the main parking lot. There are actually a few different ways you can get into the park, but this is the main lot that most people use, and it brings you right here at Knoebel's Boulevard, which is probably the only real main thoroughfare through the park. Over on the right, you can see Impulse, which is a fairly new coaster. The park was created in 1926. And it's grown enormously since then and is very popular. Impulse is one of the few steel coasters in the park. Knoebel's began as a lumber company, and that explains why they're able to do some of the amazing wood coaster construction projects that you'll see in here. So what I'm going to do is walk a little ways down Knoebel's Boulevard, and from there we'll sort of begin zigzagging throughout the park. You'll notice that there are lots of trees. The park is very shady, and there are also beautiful plantings all over. There's the photo station for Impulse, where you can get your picture, and this is the actual station for Impulse. Pretty intense ride. And you can see scattered throughout are all these little concession booths. There are games, there are food booths, just dotting the park everywhere. I love this building over on the right. It's one of the many whimsical structures at the park. It sells, well, you'd think it would sell bread, but it doesn't. It sells cookies on one side and frozen yogurt on the other. Over on the left, you can see Downdraft, one of the park's many thrill rides, and in front of us is the balloon ride. Now, this little path over here is called Skloosh Road, and what the heck, let's take it. Let's go down here. You can see the big Ferris wheel on the left. The sky ride that was at the beginning of this video is behind us. There's Downdraft. And there it goes. Knoebel's is very proud of its history, and throughout the park you'll see a lot of displays like this. They're just historical displays from Knoebel's past and Ellisburg's past. There's a big museum we'll see in a little bit that has a whole history of coal mining in this area of Pennsylvania, as well as historical artifacts from the park. Here are a couple of kiddie rides, the Rockin' Tug and the Crazy Submarine. Although by the look of it, it looks exactly like the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. And now in front of us is Skloosh, a massive shoot-the-chutes ride. And we'll go take a look at that in a second. Now here's what I mean about no formal midway. You see there are all these little winding paths between the buildings. There's another kiddie ride there, a caterpillar ride. And that's the case throughout the entire park. That's a lot of water. Also notice that what we're currently on is pavement. However, the bulk of the park has crushed trap rock on the ground, which is actually a lot more comfortable to walk on. So let's go up this little pathway here and begin our zigzagging. There's a scrambler, obviously, potato cakes. Knoebel's has phenomenal food, and it's really affordable. We were there with our family and our grandkids, and all of us had a really good breakfast for about 20 bucks. And as you can see, now we're back on Knoebel's Boulevard. And over here on the left is the Pioneer train, which I'll talk about a little more on our way back. This right here is the Alamo, which is the park's big sit-down restaurant. They have a lot of eateries, but this is the biggest, and it's a formal air-conditioned restaurant where it's table service. And it's, again, really good food at very reasonable prices. So let's walk down this little pathway here. You can see there's a pizza shop. And in front of us is the patio grill, where you can get the usual burgers and fries. And the seating area is the little patio on the right, which is why it's called Patio Grill. Over on the left, in front of us there, is the Playland Arcade, which I'll talk about a little more later. Because there are so many little winding paths, and they're pretty tight, often you're sort of squeezing between people, to get around in the park. Knoebel's advertises itself as the largest free admission park in the United States, and they are. And there's no charge for parking, and there's no charge to get into the park. You can pay per ride if you want to, if you don't want to go on that many rides. You can also get a wristband, but not on weekends. On weekends, you have to purchase books of tickets. Now, you'd think that might hurt their attendance, but it doesn't. I'm here on a Monday, which is normally a slow day for a park, and you can see how crowded it is. The day before, the Sunday, where you have to buy books of tickets, it was mobbed. So, Knoebel's really does a good business. In front of us now is Satellite, which is a vintage ride from the 1950s. Beyond that was Cosmo's Curves, which was their kiddie coaster. On the left is one of the best bumper car rides in the entire United States. It uses the old loose bumper cars, which are really big, heavy cars, and it gives you a good jolt. Kept in wonderful condition. The park is always immaculately maintained. And right now we're starting to enter a sort of large Kiddieland area that's pretty spread out. You can see these really interesting boat rides where kids can actually pilot their own boat and steer it through this man-made stream abutting the highway. Many of the rides that you're going to see, the kiddie rides, are vintage from the 1940s and 50s. Herschel rides, Mangles rides, they have some Hampton rides, and they're all in really good condition. And over here is a favorite, a rare kiddie handcar ride. And in front of us now is the band shell, where they provide entertainment all day. A lot of bands, and they have animal acts and magic acts. Right here is Totem Treats, where you can get some French fries or Knoebel's own version of cheese on a stick. They're basically skewered mozzarella balls, but they're pretty good. And here's more Kiddieland. The big slide on the right there is popular with both adults and children. And the pony carts. So we're going to leave the Kiddieland area and go into yet another Kiddieland area across a bridge. Now, bridges are pretty common at Knoebel's. There's the bridge for the old smoky train. The park is intersected by a series of creeks and streams, and in fact tends to flood quite heavily on various years, and the park always manages to recover. So you'll see a lot of bridges that you have to cross. It's quite picturesque, actually. This is another kiddie favorite, the Panther cars. And crossing this bridge leads us to really the only sort of themed section in the park. It's sort of like an old western town. And this is one of the park's 2 vintage carousels. This one is a rare Stein and Goldstein carousel. There aren't many of those in the world at all. I think 2 left. And as you can hear, it has a working band organ. In fact, Knoebel's has 6 working band organs, which is phenomenal. Here's an interesting look at an old style of cutting wood. You have this old steam tractor that's powering a blade, and there are people there all day cutting wood, and that provides wood for these phenomenal wooden gifts that they have in that shop. There's a blacksmithing shop. There's a lot of really beautiful stuff here. You see those benches. How much would you pay for those benches? Well, at Knoebel's, they were $250, which for a handcrafted wood bench like that is not bad at all. The only problem is, how do you get it home? And here are some more of those benches. The one without a back was $100. You can't even get one at that price in a big box store. Now in front of us across the creek, you see this little shop, and next to it is the entrance to Cosmo's play area, a really cute playground for kids. Cosmo is one of the park mascots, and the other is Ricky the raccoon. Cosmo is a little chipmunk. Now notice this picture on the building over on the left there. That's actually Dick Knoebel, the park owner, and his wife, hawking some of the food in the park. It's pretty funny. This area is a big food plaza, and it's beautifully designed. These are actual old carousel roofs, basically, that rotate. You can see over here, there's Cosmo's playground, and all these gears are powered by a water wheel that sits over here on the right. And that's the power that turns the roof of the pavilion. And over here on the left is the Old Mill Sundae shop. Really good ice cream in there, and good milkshakes. And now on the right over here is the park's miniature golf course. It's a lot of fun. This stand in front of us sells incredible pierogies and also a treat called tritators. Hard to describe. They're sort of like a big triangular hash brown, but they're really good. Directly in front of us is Cesari's Pizza, which, as you might expect, serves really good pizza. You can see the band setting up here. They have performers that perform all day long throughout the park, not just on the band show. Now at this point you may be wondering, where the heck are we in the park? Well, we began this tour where the parking lot was at the far east end, and we made a sort of counterclockwise movement, and now we're at the far north end, which brings us to one of the greatest rides in the park, the Haunted House, which is consistently rated as one of the best dark rides in the United States. It's a lot of fun. And it's an upcharge. In other words, even if you have a wristband, you have to pay extra to get on that. That's how good it is. I should caution you though, it's not really a ride for little kids. They'd probably get their pants scared off. The white building over here is Laser Command, which is a big laser tag arena. And directly in front of us now is Time Machine Theater, which is a lot of fun for kids. They have performers who basically get the kids involved in a twisted reenactment of an old fairy tale story. It's very much participation by the kids and participation by the older members of the audience too. It's a lot of fun. And there's a kiddie parachute drop next to it. And this is the Carousel Museum and Gift Shop, and it's gorgeous in there. It has a lot of, again, history of Knoebel's carousels, but also a lot of other carousel memorabilia in there and some beautiful gifts. Knoebel's has fantastic gift shops. I just have to say that, because I have a lot of their gifts. There's a roundup. And this is International Plaza, which, if you're staying at the park, then this is a place you would come for breakfast in the morning. And it has really good food, again, at reasonable prices. We have stayed at the park many, many times. We've camped out here. They have a huge campground. They also have cabins you can rent, and as you're going to see a little later, they have cottages that are actually in the park on the Midway that you can rent. So there are all sorts of options for families who want to spend a little more time here. In front of us now is Black Diamond Mining Company, which is another really wonderful dark ride. It's another rescue effort. Knoebel's rescued it from New Jersey. It was a one-of-a-kind ride and rebuilt it. There's the museum I was telling you about. There's little gemstone mining for kids. And in front of us now is another terrific ride, the Giant Flume. Beautifully landscaped. You get a little wet, not certainly as much as in Skloosh. And over here in front of us you can see a tilt-a-whirl in the distance. There's a little pirate ship that kids can play with, turning the steering wheels. That's the entrance to the Flume. We're now looking south down Phoenix Lane, and that's a whole row of game booths there. And we're going to take a little left here and start our zigzagging again. There's the entrance to the Carousel Museum. One thing I should mention about the Black Diamond is that it is kid appropriate. Whereas Haunted House is really intense, the Black Diamond is just silly and plain fun, so little kids would really enjoy that. There are the teacups in front of us. And notice this has taken us back to those food pavilions with the spinning tops. The pierogi pavilion is in front of us. And there's the Parrot Trooper. So let's just scoot through this little path here. This big blue and white building in front of us is the back of a game booth that features Stryker. And over on the left is the miniature golf course. There's another nice example of beautiful landscaping in the park, and behind that is the Roto-Jets. The Cosmotron is basically a a Himalaya ride, a flat ride, spinning you around at high speed in the dark with flashing lights. This building on the left is Sports World with sports-themed gifts. And next to it is a shooting gallery. And in front of us is Flying Turns. It is an amazing achievement for the park. It's basically the only existing wooden bobsled ride, and Knoebel's spent 8 years building it themselves. So that's one of the landmarks in the park. They have all these murals on the walls too, which are really pretty. Here's another landmark, the Fudge and Nut Shop. It's a beautiful old stone building. It's also known as Stony Gables. So if you're near this, you know that you are near the park office. And near the park office is this building in front of us. And there are the rotojets we saw earlier. On the left is where you get your tickets and your hand stamps. So that's basically the ticket gates for the park. And usually in the beginning of the day they have stanchions that are placed to funnel the crowds. Later in the day it's catch as catch can. But this is where you buy your tickets. And there, if you need to measure your children, little Cosmo there will do it. And there's the entrance to the miniature golf course. So hopefully this is all starting to make some sort of sense. You're starting to get a sense of how all these pieces fit together. And here's another landmark in the park, the big stone lighthouse. And the shutters there that look like a window, every so often there's a puppet show that happens there, and they interact with the audience. Now this gives you an idea of the flooding that Knoebel's has to deal with. That was the 2004 high water mark. That was 2011. So they do get some pretty big flooding here in different seasons. So we're now heading southerly across this bridge, and this brings us to another landmark in the park. This is the birthday pavilion. It's really cute. It's designed like a giant birthday cake suspended in the air. It's even got candles on the top of it that light up. And over here in front of us now is the park's grand carousel, over 100 years old, and it's a mix of different artists, Loof and Carmel. Beautiful ride, and the ornate structure on this is just a joy. All the original paintings on the rounding boards up there. Not one, but 2 band organs. This is the big operating they have going now. And it's also one of the last remaining carousels with a working ring game where you can lean over the horse and actually grab a ring, and if you get a brass one, you get a free ride.
Attention riders, in order to catch rings, you must be seated by yourself on an outside course. Please do not attempt to catch rings while standing on the platform.
Here's the other band organ that's currently quiet while the big one plays. And let's walk around and take a look at the ring mechanism. You can see that big lion's mouth. After you grab the ring, you're supposed to throw it back in the mouth if you didn't catch the brass one. And it recycles the rings up through that big arm. The arm has a little clip at the end of it that holds the rings in place. Now we're looking at the back of the Playland arcade. And in the distance you can see the patio grill. And there's another beautiful mural. And this large building in front of us now houses both an arcade, which has a big selection of pinball machines, and it houses the XD Theater if you're into some virtual thrills. Over here you can drive your own miniature bumper boats. And this is another side of the Playland Arcade. The other one we just saw is called the Roaring Creek Arcade. Here's a World War II memorial that the park erected. And here we are again at the Patio Grill, which is right next to the Alamo and the Oasis. There's a ticket booth. There are a lot of those scattered throughout the park. There's another view of the other side of the Playland Arcade. So now we're on the opposite side of the carousel. You can see the birthday pavilion in the distance in front of us. There's another ticket booth. And this over on the left is one of my favorite things in the park. I remember it from my youth at Mountain Park. Basically, it's a trash receptacle that sucks your paper in. Kids are always amused by that. And this is the famous Knoebel's neon sign with the two pillars. At one point it was a formal entrance to the park. Now it just sort of is there, but it's another landmark. Just beyond that on the left would be the birthday pavilion, and on the right is the Alamo. Up ahead on the right you can again see the birthday pavilion, and on the left is the treasure chest, which is another gift shop in the park. We're now near the center of the park, and we're heading sort of southwesterly. We're going to go across this bridge. You notice those wooden boards on each side? Knoebel's actually put those there to let people write graffiti on the bridges. Instead of trying to carve into the hard wood that holds the structure up, they actually put nice bright wood that you can read the graffiti on. And on the right over here is Fascination, the popular game. And that, of course, was the lighthouse with the puppet show going on. This is the general store, another place where you can buy stuff. And over here is the park office and the first aid station. So if you remember, earlier on, we were near the park office, which also means we were near the ticket gates and Stony Gables. Ahead of us is the flying scooter ride, simply called the Flyers. It's one of the best in the country. And interestingly, it's powered by propane. There is the Stony Gables, the nut house. I don't lie, I don't lie, I don't lie. Propane. And now coming into view is the Flying Turns. We're at the opposite side that we had looked at before. And if you're keeping score, the Flying Turns is at the intersection of Knoebel's Boulevard and Phoenix Lane, which we saw earlier. And also off to the right there you can see a rare looper. Well, you may think, well, that doesn't look that thrilling, but that's just the start of the ride. You actually go around a corner and then go up a much taller hill. We'll walk around the ride here and you can see that. And I love that sign. They told us we couldn't build it, but we did anyway. And that really, in a nutshell, is the philosophy of Knoebels. They do things that other parks wouldn't dare to do, and yet they're very successful at it. In front of us is Stratosphere, which is the park's drop tower. And now we're approaching the sort of central western end of the park. And now in front of us is the Christmas Cottage, which has lots and lots of Knoebels themed Christmas gifts. There's the return lift for the flying turns. And this on the left is the North Pole, and it's amazing. It's this pole that's covered with ice in 90-degree weather. I don't know how they do it, but you touch that and it is ice. It's amazing. Now we're at the far west end of the park. There's the flume over there that we saw earlier. There are a whole row of game booths here. This is Phoenix Lane. And in front of us is another big eatery in the park, Phoenix Junction. And why all this mention of Phoenix? Well, that's because of this. One of the greatest wooden roller coasters in existence, the Phoenix. And it sort of encapsulates the park's approach to things. They rescued this from a park in Texas that had closed. It was called the Rocket originally, and Knoebels dismantled the entire roller coaster, and then in-house they rebuilt it all right here, and it is a phenomenal ride. And right there is another one of Knoebels' band organs, a big Wurlitzer that plays all day. Let's take a listen. And right next to the Phoenix, which is going up the lift there, is Gasoline Alley, which is a really nice antique car ride that's interwoven with the structure of the Phoenix. So you sort of drive in and out of all this timber that supports the roller coaster. Now over here on the left is the Knoebels family home. Yes, they've actually lived for generations right in the middle of the park. There's a little go-kart track for the kids, and Fandango, which is a mini frisbee. And that brings us to the far southwest end of the formal park. Now you can see that covered bridge. That leads across the creek to the Knoebel's campground, which is absolutely massive. They have places for RV hookups, they have places for tents. In fact, Karen and I have camped right next to the turn of the Twister roller coaster. There was a tent platform set up right there so we could hear the roller coaster go by all night. There are camping sites way out in the woods. There are cabins that you can rent. There are basically miniature houses that you can rent out there. There are all sorts of options. And definitely this park is worth more than a day's visit. As you can see, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And the food is very reasonable, so you wouldn't have to worry about where to eat. And there's an enormous variety of food as well. Personally, I'd be very happy living here. Over here on the left, you can see yet another band organ, a smaller model. Now over here on the right, you can see these small little cottages, and those you can actually rent. They rent by the week, and if you wanted to, you could live in the park. That ride that you see there, that is Twister. Twister was another amazing achievement by Knoebel's. It originally resided at Elitch Gardens, and Elitch decided to move their park, and so they tore down Twister, which was considered a masterpiece of a wooden coaster. So Knoebel's bought the original blueprints and rebuilt the ride with a few modifications in their park, and they did it all in-house. That little pathway there is the pathway to get to the entrance to Twister. It is a really intense wooden coaster. Brilliantly done. But Phoenix is a lot of fun and puts a smile on your face. Twister will make you grit your teeth. It's incredibly intense. Over on the left is the park office. And then over here on the right is the entrance to Knoebel's swimming pool. It's one of the few parks left in the country that actually has a bona fide swimming pool, not a wave pool. As you're going to see, it has diving boards, it has a fountain in the middle, just like the old style swimming pools that were created in many parks in the 1920s. Knoebel's calls theirs the Crystal Pool. They also have a small water park area at the back of this. You can see the water slides there, right next to Twister. And as you can see, it's really popular. Over here is another stage area where they do little musical reviews. And over here on the right is the Pioneer train, which we saw at the beginning of the video. This is the loading station. Pioneer train is also known as the 1.5 mile train because it is 1.5 miles long. It's a wonderful ride out into a wooded area and back. If you look off in the distance on the side of the mountain, you can see the scenic skyway. And this brings us full circle. There's the Alamo on the left. There's Power Surge in front of us, along with Impulse. And it brings us back to where we started, at the east end of the park. So I hope this has given you a sort of feel for what Knoebel's is like. It's unique among parks in the United States. It has great food, really friendly employees, a wonderful, relaxed family environment. And again, a true family park where all ages, from kids to grandparents, can find fun things to do together. And another thing that's really impressive about the park is the lighting, which you really didn't see much of in this video. The park looks spectacular at night with lots of neon. So if you're making a trip out this way and plan to stay at the park, really plan to stay into the evening. It's a completely different atmosphere and quite beautiful. So if you're traveling through the eastern Pennsylvania area, it's off the beaten path, but it's well worth taking the trip there. You'll have a wonderful time at Knoebel's Amusement Resort.